reflected the rare disease community. So next, I'm going to hand that down into topics that are kind of useful at any stage along the path, whether it's early on and you're just learning about, sort of how to get involved with patient-focused drug development, how to think about the stage of the therapeutic pipeline in a particular disease space, or a company's involvement with the patient community at a certain point in time. All of this information can really be applied at different times and at every time across the pipeline. Next slide, please. For each of those 8 areas, we have kind of a very similar template that we use so that the information is kind of easy to grasp once you get oriented to the format. And as Annie said, we really took quite a while to think through the best way to present this information. So each of the 8 focus areas starts with this gray sidebar that kind of introduces the topic and how it relates to patient involvement. Next slide, please. In the center portion of these 2-page layouts, and you can look at it in this format either on the flipbook on the website or when you download the PDF, it also comes up with this 2-page format. You'll see 2 sets of action steps. The first is for patient advocacy leaders to consider, and we really did try to make these very action-oriented and something that you can grasp and sort of take a bite-sized chunk or eat the whole thing at once of all of the items in this column. And to the right of that is actions for sponsors to consider. And we use the word sponsor in a very broad way. It's not just sponsors from industry. This would also be appropriate for academic research sponsors, for institutions that are sponsoring research, for multi-stakeholder collaborations. So we didn't want to just limit it to industry, but we've tried to be very open-ended in who this could apply to. Next column, next slide, please. And in this 4th column, on the edge of the right-hand edge of the page, are opportunities for collective action, because as Annie said, for many things involved in rare disease therapy development, it takes a village. And in many of the activities that we talked about throughout the 4 workshops, there was a need to bring people together, or a benefit to bringing people together earlier and more often and more consistently and more collaboratively across the whole development pipeline, from early stage all the way through to post-market, when all of those requirements for tracking the safety and efficacy of medicine and making sure that patients have access to it, the earlier those start being collaborative and everyone's thinking about the same outcome measures and working on collecting the same types of information and data that becomes evidence, the better. So we wanted to make sure that we called out those collective opportunities for action all along the way in each of these focus areas. And I think with that, I'm turning this over to Eric Gasho from the National Health Council.
Thanks, Kim. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the additional resources that are included with this guide. But before I do that, I just want to echo a lot of what I've heard today. Really excited to be at this point that we're sharing this with the community. I think it's going to be a wonderful resource for you all, regardless of where you sit, what your role is, kind of where you are in your patient engagement journey. And really want to thank all of the folks that came with us along on this journey to get to where we are today. It was great to be with many of the acolytes of patient engagement I've been working with for quite some time, and meet a lot of new people who are really dedicated, tireless advocates in this area. And one of the things that was really great as we went through this process was that as we were planning the roundtables and the workshops, as we were putting together the pre-reads and the discussion guides, we came up with a lot of really great resources that came up throughout that. And we included them right there in the guide. So you see here We have 112 resources that are linked, and these are very wide ranging. We have all of the guidances that we were considering. We have rubrics, toolkits, glossaries, white papers, all sorts of things that really add a lot of additional rich information that folks can peruse at their leisure. So while we think the guide certainly stands alone as a document for those who maybe want to dig a little bit deeper, that want to gain some more context into what's discussed in it, we've got a number of links for people to follow it and read more. Importantly, do want to note that we were really careful to make sure that everything that's included is in the public domain. So you won't hit any paywalls. You won't have to worry about those types of things happening. So they're all things that you can easily access. And many of these things are just really helpful to help put all of what you're reading in the guide in context. And again, if you really want to dig deeper, give you an easy way to do that. If we go to the next slide. Also want to highlight that we included as an appendix all of the summaries of the 4 workshops that we held. So it's a lot of the same information that you see in the guide, but kind of displayed in a slightly different way. I think it's really important that this is included. Maybe you know exactly where you are in the research pipeline and want to kind of read up on sort of how, what are things you should be thinking about within that stage of development. Maybe your brain works kind of similarly to mine, where you really kind of think of these things in a linear fashion and find it easier and more approachable to do it that way as well. So wanted to give folks a couple different options of ways to read through this, and think this is adds benefit to it as well. If we go to the next slide, just real quickly, this kind of gives you a snapshot of the look and feel of what the appendix looks like. Again, organized a little bit differently, color coded, helps you kind of wade your way into the information in ways that may be slightly different and potentially more approachable depending on kind of where you find yourselves in the journey. If we go to the next slide. So here's just kind of a little bit of a snapshot of everything I just discussed. Again, a lot of really rich information. Again, do think the guide certainly stands alone, but we think by combining the guide, the appendix, the resources, it really makes this document relevant for everyone. So you may be just learning what the PFDD acronym means and really want to kind of start from the beginning and learn a little bit about it at a high level. Maybe you've been working on this for the last decade plus and really want to dive in deep and learn more. So we think with all these things combined, we think this can be as useful to as many people as possible. And it was really important to the group as we put this together. So again, thank you all to everyone who came along on this, and look forward to continuing the discussion. I'm going to turn it over to Annie, I believe.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. So I think we're on the last slide. We've had a couple questions. Just to repeat for everybody, this entire presentation and this slide deck will be on our website in the same location where the guide, and we also have some FAQs and some other companion materials. We also have the meeting summaries that are, as Eric just went through, they're embedded in the back as resources in the guide, and then they're also pulled out separately if you want to download those separately. Since we're living in a virtual world, we do not have printed copies of the guide, but you can download the PDF and print the guide yourself. And it is laid out in a format that you can do that easily and flip through it. And again, we just want to thank everybody who participated in the creation of this. Every single roundtable participant made this possible. Every community member who shared a case study and really came forward with your perspective and your lens made this possible. And most especially to the project leadership team and the steering committee who didn't balk at all at the idea, or despite all the chaos and craziness of our lives and the great urgency that we all felt over the last year, still considered this to be a tremendous priority for our community and made sure that we got it done in the ambitious timeline that we had set out. So I just want to thank everybody. We believe that this will be a really transformational tool for all of our partners. We hope that it will be. And if there are ways that you are utilizing it or could see that we could update it in some way, please share that with us so that we can continue to make sure this is a force multiplier for all of us as a community as we continue to learn from one another in our patient-focused drug development efforts. So thank you to everybody for being with us today, and thank you for being a part of this really phenomenal community. Thanks.